We want to welcome everyone watching this program on replay, and thank you for joining us. I'm Steve, the Bookman Eisenstein, and this is the Rare Book Cafe, the first and only Blab TV program of its kind in the entire world about antiquarian books. Thank you for joining us on Blab.im. The Rare Book Cafe is brought to you by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, celebrating 34 years this weekend, the 11th through the 13th, at the Coliseum in St. Petersburg. 114 dealers from around the world and around the country will be selling rare and common out-of-print books for your reading pleasure. Later in the program, we'll be doing some questions and answers. Our guest tonight is Elly Rosen. For those of you who know me from this show and Books on a Bookshelf, I have something called credential envy. And while I always say you can put somebody's information on an index card barely, Elly would take a stack of index cards to list his credentials, and he is the founder of the Appraisers International Society. And we are going to be talking tonight about the fine art and science of appraisal with Elly, who has also testified as an expert witness in court. You can't get much more in the credential envy field than that. And if everybody can see a little bird or the tweet sign, let everybody know that we're on tonight, we're broadcasting, and tell your friends about us. The pair of hands you see in the corner of each picture are called props. Basically, if you like what the person is saying, this is a labor of love for us, so we'd like to know that you're enjoying what we're saying. So let your friends and neighbors know about us on Twitter and Facebook. And finally, this program is recorded, so you or your friends can watch the replay on Blab or on the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair blog at floridabookfair.blogspot.com. That's floridabookfair.blogspot.com. So we are all here spread out. Usually we do the show. Thorne's in St. Petersburg. I'm in Miami Beach. Allan is right here in the Tampa St. Pete. Elly's joining us from Oregon, and we are all here in St. Petersburg. Elly,
actually, I'm in New York.
Oh, you're in New York. Okay. I thought you were in Oregon. All right.
Nope. That's Randine.
Okay. I apologize. I didn't realize that.
Not necessary.
Okay. Elly has been an expert witness, a trial consultant, case laws, has testified numerous times in many jurisdictions and types of courts, from divorce and bankruptcy to mail fraud to postal theft and insurance. An appraiser is somebody that you're kind of putting your financial life in their hands, because if you need a professional appraisal, there's usually a purpose for it. And with that said, let me introduce Elly Rosen, the founder of AIS. And Elly, talk to us about the fine art of appraising, the AIS Society, and thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Yes. Can you hear me?
Elly?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm having slight echoes, but I'm going to try to ignore it as long as you're not having it. Okay. So, hi, Steve.
We're getting a little bit, but it should be all right. We'll bear with it for the moment.
Okay. Maybe it's better now. You still hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Steve, for having me. And Allan, Thorne, good to be with you. Firstly, if you don't mind a correction, Steve, appraising is not an art. It's a mistake to think of it as such. Because
I apologize.
You don't have to apologize.
I should have said art and science. Art and science.
Everyone has a different approach to it. I'm merely going from the AI standard, from the perspective of our principles. Of course, it's fine for you to call it an art, for anyone to do so if that's how they perceive it. The reason we avoid the word is because art implies that it's simply subject to the imagination of the craftsperson or the maker or the artist, or in this case, the valuer, the appraiser. And we are not supposed to be giving opinions of worth based on what we think the item should be worth. It's a major departure point. But dealers often perceive valuation as part of the art of being a dealer. So to a dealer, since they regularly, and I know for myself, I was a dealer. I was a gemstone dealer. I was a jewelry retailer. And so I know that as a dealer, we have our view of what things should be worth. What are they worth to us? What do we think the market should pay? That's all fine. It's not fine for a professional valuer, because the valuer does not report what we think the market should do. We're supposed to be reporting what the market does do. So our opinion, even though it is very much our opinion, as the courts have told us, I'm still getting a lot of echo. If you don't mind my asking, is it disturbing your end, or are you hearing me clearly?
Elly, let me say,
it's fine. We can hear
when you were
fine.
Okay, I'll try to make this even lower then. I don't know if this will improve things. You can still hear me now, right?
Yes.
I can hear you, and now I can see you. And I don't know if this makes sense. Remember, I'm the place to see. You're a computer guy. When I didn't have your image, it seemed like there was a better quality of sound. Now that everything is up, I see Allan, I see you. Thorne is audio only. Thorne, are you there? Okay, yes, so I have Thorne audio only. Let's keep going from here.
Okay.
And I'm frozen.
I'm seeing Thorne, I'm seeing Allan, I'm not seeing you, Steve. But that's okay. I know what you look like.
All I have is Elly and me. So we're all having fun on our team.
Okay, but the audio is okay?
Yes, perfect now.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the courts have told us, since we'll combine the subjects of valuation and trial work, because they do go hand in hand, because it's really at a trial that the truth usually will out. Because all the bluffing and all the nonsense valuers, appraisers, dealers might go through to rationalize all forms and levels of value, which often has no justification, in a courtroom that rarely survives. Because they have a chance during cross-examination to dig into things if there's a qualified expert on the other side, advising counsel as a trial consultant, which was always a part of my work at trial. So let me combine the two. So courts have told valuers, appraisers, in malpractice cases, negligence cases, when the appraisers were being sued. These were real estate appraisers, they were personal property appraisers, jewelry appraisers, art appraisers, all different parts of the world. The common law approach to all of this is fundamentally the same. And so what the courts have said is that a common fallacy amongst experts is to believe that their opinion is more important than the facts. And then they go on to say that, of course, it is your opinion, and it's supposed to be. However, it's a representation of facts, because it's supposed to be based on your knowledge of facts in the market, of actual market activity, prices that people have paid. Our opinion is not a fact. It is indeed our opinion. It's our value, our statement of the number we believe most represents the market activity that we're talking about. So that's basically what it comes down to. So that's why I say art is a problem, because it lends credibility to the misconception that many dealer appraisers have that, oh, well, they're supposed to give the opinion of what they think the item should be worth. That's always a problem. Because the moment one is not working from knowledge of actual market activity, and if, let's say they say, well, I'm not really sure, but I'll say 10,000. Well, then why not say 50,000? Why not say 300,000? It's based on nothing. Why not say 1,000? So it is our opinion, but it's supposed to have a reasonable basis. So to a great degree, I've just dealt with pretty much a foundation material of both valuation or appraising and the role of trial experts. Because the courts have told us a lot through hundreds of years of court cases. I've only been involved for less than half a century of court cases, but there were court cases that we teach, always did teach from, which predated us. We have a Supreme Court decision on value, which predated any personal property appraisal programs. Numerous decisions. We have a decision from, I think it was Justice Black, before the Supreme Court when he was a justice in New York. And it was an art authentication case. And he was giving instructions to the jury on how they handle expert testimony of an authenticator. And he said very correctly that you don't have to go with what an expert says. It's up to you. You, jury, you're the trier of fact. So you assess the facts. You assess whether you believe them or you don't believe them. You don't have to always believe them. You don't have to never believe them. You can believe a little of what they say and not other things they say. And he said, bottom line, he instructed them to understand that experts, he said, are often no more than tinkling cymbals. They make a lot of noise, but they don't necessarily say anything helpful. So,
I know when that's a great expression, and something that I think you and I spoke about the other day was with this case that's going on in New York, where for years and years, the people that were involved in the sale and the authenticity puffed their chest, banged their drums, and all of that other stuff about how knowledgeable they were. But when they got into a court of law, you found out that the guy had only seen 3 original Rothkos in his life, and the other one was supposed to be the artist's son and said, I can't do this. But yet all prior to that time, until the witness box, these guys were experts. That coincides with what you're saying. The question I would love to ask you and hear the answer.
In most of my cases, in my tax cases, the experts, others, some good ones in their trade, they were well known, but frankly, not qualified to be appraising. And in all of those cases where my client, the IRS, prevailed, sometimes despite me, so not necessarily because of me. But the experts on the other side usually were a disaster.
Okay.
And a lot of bluff and bluster when they're in their trade or when they're writing articles or talking in forums. But that you can survive and get away with the bluff, not on a witness stand. Excuse me, if there's a qualified person on the other side advising counsel for the cross-examination.
Okay.
So you're certainly right in what you say. There's in every specialty area, it's not just art, it's not just jewelry, it includes real estate, it includes every appraisal specialty. We have the same situation. The difference is in personal property, meaning essentially everything but real estate, anything that moves or is movable. So that includes a painting that might be affixed to a wall. It might even include a mural. It could be valued in place on that wall, in that structure, because that's its reality. Could be they're going to be tearing down the building. Then they need a qualified valuer who will value it not for value in place, but for value held for sale in the market. When they bring in the people to very carefully remove it later on. The real estate appraiser can't appraise that mural. There's a common misconception, even in some European countries that were involved. involved with, because we
Ellie,
are fully
I've lost your
global
audio.
in our standard. But there's an exception. They often refer to
Now I
personal
do,
property.
yeah.
Oh, you hear me now?
Yeah, just for a second, yes.
So it's only for a second, right? That's the nice thing about my echo. When I lose my
Let
echo,
me
I know
ask
you
you this
lost my
question,
audio.
Ellie.
Okay.
You've been in court to testify, and the way I'm describing it is somebody was saying something, and you were there to disvalidate what they're saying, because that's what you were there for in the legal opinion. So if you can, on the premise of this, I mean, if it's not confidential, I would love to, and I think the audience too would love to hear what was at stake, what somebody claimed, how they supported it, and how you took their claim and, for lack of a better word, shredded it on the witness stand.
Okay, well, we usually, the role of an expert witness is not to shred the other expert. However, it's often by default part and parcel of the assignment, because often as an expert, we will also be a trial consultant, and they might want us to review. There's a practice called appraisal review, where an expert on valuation, on appraising, part of the job is to look at the work product, look at the appraisal report of the side to advise counsel for when they're going to depose that expert before the trial or cross-examine them during the trial. They need us to help them because they're not expert valuers. So we have to explain to them perceived problems with the methodology, the reporting, the basis, the claims made by the other expert. So it's not our goal to shred the other expert. I've been up against experts who are sometimes my closest associates at the time.
I use the word
counsel will try to
way.
play us against each other. They'll try to play their game, but we're not there for that. We're there to give our honest, impartial, expert opinion. And we're not there to decide for other people what's right or wrong. That's another misconception a lot of appraisers have. We're there to assist the court, the trier of fact, because they have to make a decision on matters for which they do not have expertise. So we're not there as a fact witness. We're allowed to give opinions. A lay witness, a witness to an accident or whatever, they're not allowed to testify to opinions, usually. These things all vary with jurisdiction. But an expert witness is supposed to testify to opinions. Now, often that's hearsay, right? An appraiser's opinion is often based on hearsay. If I'm reading an auction catalog and reading what took place at that auction and the prices and such, I wasn't there. That's classic hearsay. I don't know for my own knowledge what happened. A lay witness would not necessarily be able to testify to that. I'm allowed to ask, to consult with dealers to help them inform my value opinion. That's hearsay. I'm relying on secondhand information. A lay witness can't do that. They're a fact witness. The reason we're allowed to testify to opinion is the whole reason we're there, to assist the court on matters requiring expertise of a type they don't have. That's why they go through this big qualification procedure, voir dire, it's often called, where one side tries to qualify their expert, the other side tries to disqualify the expert. In the 90s, there was a Supreme Court decision in Daubert, very interesting one, because it talks about the rules for qualifying or disqualifying an expert witness. And there was a case in 2011 in Kentucky, an appraiser from Texas holds themselves out as super qualified, written books that they apparently might have plagiarized from other people. I can't notice for sure. But they were disqualified. They weren't allowed to testify in the trial. And it was because they failed a Daubert.
Elly, I've completely lost your sound. Yeah, and I really wanted to hear why they were disqualified.
Getting audio only now.
It was a Daubert.
Well.
It was a Daubert hearing. Daubert lays out basic rules. The expert needs to be able to show that they understand the principles involved in their expert analysis and its reporting. They need to know how to apply those principles. They need to show that they did do so in this case. And they need to show that reasonable basis which would be accepted for their area of expertise. It's a pretty logical approach once you hear it and think about it. It's in fact what we've taught for 10 years before Daubert in my expert witness courses. This person, it was an emerald necklace, a suite of a necklace and earrings, bought for $500,000. An appraisal was written for, I believe it was close to $1 million, by the seller. It was for a brewery magnate in Kentucky they died. After they died, the sons sued because they tried to sell the necklace, the suite, for the amount in this appraisal the seller had written for their father, and they couldn't get anywhere near it. So they sued the seller, the jeweler, the appraiser, all the same person. And the jeweler won, as he should, because what their claim was, you charged our father too much. Well, this is a capitalist society. This is capitalism. This is what makes the world go around. That's why there's laissez-faire. The government theoretically might be changing, but keeps hands off business and lets business function and lets the market decide and sort it out. As long as there's no representation, that's the whole point, that you're not allowed. So in that particular case, they sued saying you charged my father too much. That would never even have survived the pre-trial hearing. Because what do you mean they charged too much? Did someone hold a gun to his head? They said, I want $2 million. You want to pay it? You paid it. So what's the problem here? If there was no misrepresentation, the problem was there was this appraisal report he wrote for close to $1 million. That was the basis of the trial. The reason they allowed it to go to trial was because that illegalized point of sale document, which he should never have written because he didn't know how to appraise. But all jewelers, all dealers, book dealers, art dealers, antique dealers, everyone does it. It's very dangerous. We teach many cases in courses, our 250 hours of courses that run through the whole year for our global valuation standard. We look at many cases from around the world, spanning 45 years, of merchants who have been successfully sued for appraisals they should never have written, which made them sometimes pay 3 times what the item was worth. Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve.
No, that's okay. I have a question on that. I understand the scenario. My question, and I think you said it, but you were, again, I'm hearing you sometimes broken.
Sorry.
Once in that trial would have been that the seller had an interest in property. So just based on that, he shouldn't have written the appraisal. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. There is no prohibition on a seller writing an appraisal or evaluation, as long as they are disclosing their interest so that people can decide whether they want to rely on their impartiality. Now, there are many valuers, many appraisers who are also dealers, and they all make their own decisions. In our ethics code, we do not prohibit a seller from valuing. Indeed, there's always this argument between the so-called independent valuer or appraiser, one who does not buy and sell, or at least that's what they say, and the one who does buy and sell. I've been both. For most of my professional career, I have not buy and sell, but I spent many, many years in the trade. I was Diamond Salesman of the Year in 1981 by De Beers. I was in retail. I was a colored stone dealer. So I understand both sides of the coin. So there's nothing wrong with being the seller where it's allowed. Now, the IRS, for example, in 1984, when because of the then Deficit Reduction Act, I testified at the time before Treasury when they were contemplating what to do about donation appraisal abuse. And that's when they came up with a qualified appraisal by a qualified appraiser. And since that time, there's a Form 8283. If one writes an appraisal for a donation of over $5,000 or similar items totaling over $5,000 in 1 year, then they need a qualified appraisal. There's some other conditions. So for some items of 500 of household contents, you also need a qualified appraisal. In any event, a qualified appraisal requires the appraiser's declaration on Form 8283. It's the one client taxpayer form that we have to sign, in which we declare that we did the job right, that we didn't have any unpermissible bias, that we didn't have an inappropriate fee, like a percentage fee, which is prohibited. That's also ethically prohibited because it gives incentive to give a higher value. And so for a donation, of course, Treasury, where the client is seeking high value, Treasury doesn't want percentage fee. So if you do that, you're knocked out. Can't be a qualified appraiser. But then they give a list of who else cannot be a qualified appraiser. And they list the buyer, the seller, the donor, the donee, anyone who is employed by any of these people, anyone who is related to anyone or anyone who is employed by any of these people. This is all one sentence. We have to declare we're none of these things. And then they have one other interesting prohibition. The appraiser has to declare that during this tax year, they didn't do the majority of their work for any of these people.
Oh.
Because even though they were not the buyer and seller, IRS says, buyer and seller, of course, we're not going to allow that for a donation. But we don't care if you are a buyer or seller. We want buyers and sellers. They know the market. But we don't want an appraiser who also has an impermissible bias if they did the majority of their appraisal work that year for any of these involved people. So your question is a very valid one, Steve, and that's why one needs to know the rules, when it is allowed, when it isn't allowed, because it will vary with jurisdiction. It will vary with each type of appraisal assignment. So that's why there's a difference between just saying, I'm an appraiser, because nobody can stop me, because there's no rules.
Yeah, no license is required.
In most of the free market world, there's no licensing or regulation of personal property valuers or appraisers. That causes
Elly.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was going to say.
I lost you.
As did I.
Okay, so I'll think of something to tell people. What would you like me to tell people, Allan or Thorne?
I'd like you to tell people how, if you had a desire to become an appraiser, how you would go about
Tell
that.
people.
You want these. up here. And the only place to get these is the Appraisers International Society, the AI Society, an organization I started 5 years ago after 3 prior decades of developing professional appraisal programs for all personal property.
That's very interesting. You started that 5 years ago. Was there nothing in place until that
Oh, yes,
standardized?
there was.
And was there?
There was, but that started when I developed the very first program in 1982.
Oh, okay.
At the time, I was with another organization, a multi-specialty personal property group. But from 82 to 93, they asked me to develop this new, first time ever, appraisal program based on valuation principles that will apply to all personal property specialties. See, this diploma here, this big one here, that's from a fellow of the Gemological Association of Great Britain. I'm a gemologist. I'm a GIA graduate gemologist. As I mentioned before, I've been involved in many levels of jewelry trade. But what I was doing for those 10 years, from 82 to 93, was developing and teaching a program to some 3,000 residents appraisers. We didn't have the internet now. Now we do all our classes live online, just like this room, except we have screen sharing and tests and quizzes and polls, materials. So it's a much bigger room, our online classroom. We don't have an echo, usually. Nothing personal, but you have great cameras here. But then it was, you go to a hotel for 9 days and you sit in for 40, 50-hour program. Our programs today are 250 classroom hours. Back then, the 3,000 or so I taught were from every specialty you can imagine. Gems, jewelry, art, fine and decorative arts, antiques, collectibles, arms and armor, coins, stamps, rare books and manuscripts, ephemera, racehorses, helicopters, oil rigs, appreciable and depreciable property, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, machinery and equipment. There's a big difference between depreciable and appreciable. However, the beauty of this thing, and this was the first time, in answer to your question, we started developing in 82 a pilot program. In 83, we had the first full-blown program for that period till 93. But those people, the whole idea was the principles we were teaching had to be able to apply to every personal property specialty. It had to apply to that mural on the wall. It had to apply to the mural when it comes off the wall. It has to be able to apply to a house trailer when it's on the road before it goes on cinder blocks, and now it might become realty. But there still might be a question of what it's going to be worth if they take it off the cinder block.
Excuse me just a moment. Stephen is calling me. I think he's having a technical problem. So go ahead. And, Thorne, if you have a question, go ahead.
Okay.
Stephen.
So I'll continue with what Allan was asking.
Yes.
So until 93, it was that program. Then I went on for a gems and jewelry group to apply that. Also, for whatever reason, they wanted to teach a personal property standard to their gems and jewelry appraisers, which makes sense because it's sort of like not being a specialist. My daughter, who I'm very proud of, she is a doctor in pediatric emergency. Before she became a board-certified specialist, she had to become a doctor. She had to learn the basics of medical science before specializing. So it certainly makes sense that if the goal is to be what we really now call a valuer, if they want to be what Americans call an appraiser, but appraiser really, just for one digress for a second, an appraiser
answer our question.
really,
Very fast.
you can appraise many things. You can appraise anything. In the appraisal process, that's the umbrella. One of the things we...
And Stephen is back. Go ahead. Uh-oh. Elly is frozen.
We appraise,
I'm
assess,
back.
analyze. Whoops, lost sound.
And you guys
I'll be back
look
a minute.
okay.
1 second. You hear me? Oh, okay, it's
Yeah.
back. Okay, I like the echo. It tells me when you're not hearing me. Okay. So in any event, one can appraise many things. One can appraise the weather. One can appraise the soil. One can appraise if they're wearing the right tie for their suit. Appraisal just means to assess, to analyze. So the appraisal process is the broad process. One of the things we do, the main thing we do, is to appraise monetary worth, valuation. That's a value. A valuer does not have to be an appraiser of authenticity, identification, quality, grade. We don't have to do any of that. Because what we're really appraising is a description. Sometimes that description is based on critical assumptions. For example, if an item was on the Titanic and unfortunately went down with everybody else, and now they had an insurance claim, someone did, for items that their family took with them. It's gone. Maybe there's not even photos. Maybe we'll have the luxury of a picture. Maybe not. They have to file a claim. The billion-dollar casualty loss industry functions based on items that are pulverized. They're gone. They still need expertise to develop, based on critical assumptions of what this hypothetical item might have been worth. I've done this in court cases, and the other side always tried to challenge me and throw me out and say, Your Honor, he didn't even see the items. How can he value them? They didn't know what they're talking about, or they knew but didn't care. But in one such case where they tried to block me, and they had an expert who did see them, except that we were able to establish that that expert didn't necessarily know what they're seeing, so it didn't matter. And when it was smoke cleared, the court found for my value. The court brought up that I didn't see the items, couldn't see the items. But, they said, watching my demeanor, reading my report, listening to my testimony, they're convinced that I understood the property to which I was attaching an opinion of value. That's a value. We value, in truth, a description. It took us 35 years to understand that. And we first really understood it 2 months ago in the AI certification program. When all the pieces of the puzzle, so many court cases, judges talking about fair market value being the hypothetical price, being the typical price. Dozens of cases, it all came together. And we finally understood that a valuer is a person who attaches an opinion of worth, a defined opinion of worth, to a description. And then, of course, we have to make very clear to the client, because the client will decide often, how much work are we going to do? The client might decide, well, you say authentication, you can do it or you can arrange it. You're telling me 20 hours of research. I don't want to pay for that. How about 5 hours? Can you do 5 hours? Well, of course we can do 5 hours. But the result after 5 hours is not going to be as reliable, as accurate as the 20 hours. If an item is gone completely, And we have to go just based on a critical assumption of it having been authentic. And we have to explain what was the basis for that assumption. It can't just be I felt like. We'd have to explain the basis, which I've done in many courts, and it has never failed, as long as we can explain it. That's a valuer, as opposed to the rest. Now, obviously, I'm a gemologist, so I respect identification, authentication. I can do it. I can arrange for it. I don't ever have to do it as a valuer. As long as everyone who's going to rely on my opinion knows what I did do, what I didn't do, why I did it or didn't do it, and what does it mean to them, and what options do they have if they want to change that.
So you are redefining and evaluating, constantly reevaluating what your industry is, and defining it. It sounds to me like defining it much more narrowly and much more specifically. Is that right?
That's interesting. I never thought of that before. Thank you for that question. See, that's what we've grown so much in the past 5 years in the AI Society program, much more than the prior 30, because now we have these 250 hours, classroom hours every year, in which we have people right now from 4 continents, 7 countries, in numerous different specialties, sitting in the same live class together like this, twice a week for 3 hours all year, while we're doing work, putting things into play as we're learning new things. And I learn from every one of those sessions. So I have now learned that this journey will never be over. That I now know. So now I could be comfortable with my ignorance. I don't have to be defensive about it. And I just recognize, God willing, I'll keep learning. So you just taught me something. Because on your question, we're not redefining our profession. We're really finally coming to understand what it is. What we've always done, but often done wrong, because we didn't understand some of the basics I've been talking about here. You heard things in this past half hour that we didn't understand for 20 years of my teaching. We learned them in the past 5 years.
So, and that's why I use the phrase redefining, because you're or perhaps refining,
clarifying
your understanding of what you're doing.
Right.
So, and that's very interesting. That's that means that your business, your field, it continues to evolve.
My field is your field, because obviously valuers make the world go around.
Sure. And as you've, it's very interesting as you've defined. I think as you've come to realize that is the case, and that you've come to recognize and then teach that the difference between a gemologist, for instance, and a valuer who is taking a set of criteria and offering an opinion about that set of criteria.
Yeah, in fact, around the world and in much of the Commonwealth, the Queen's English is often very helpful. It's actually often more specific and accurate and limiting. Around the world, in many areas of appraising, in the Commonwealth, they refer to such folks as valuers. They understand it. We didn't understand it till we started this program 5 years ago. The reason we did was because in this new program, in my 4th decade program, half the class of the first class in 2011 were Kiwis, our New Zealand division. We hit the ground running, forcing us to make sure this will work globally. Now, after 5 years of it, with alumni and candidates in 7 countries on 4 continents, now it is truly the first ever personal property multi-specialty, which we always were, going back 30 years, applying to all specialties. Now it applies to all global economies, all free market economies. An AISCV, which is an AI Society certified valuer, our highest level. That would be one of these 2 diplomas here. Such a person, what we teach very different, to answer your question and your prior question, different than before. Because we never understood this is what we had to do. But we no longer do what others do, and that is, even my old program, where they teach rote dogma. They force you to memorize. Here are the 40 things that must be in every appraisal. Here are the 17 things that must be in every jewelry appraisal. You hear those words from anybody, we now understand, leave the room. You're in the wrong room. Because rote dogma doesn't cut it. So you learn one bunch of rules. So now you know how to do one assignment. What about the other 1,000 different types of assignments you're going to run into? What are you going to do then? No one gave you 17 rules for it.
So what you're doing is teaching valuers to think.
We're forcing them to think. We're forcing them to understand that there are great advantages to thinking. Because what it comes down to is what we now teach, first and foremost, are the principles of valuation. The AI core principles are the principles of valuation. And then we teach with it the procedures for applying those principles to the needs of each assignment. The result is, ideally, if one really applies themselves, this is not an easy program. There has never been a program like this. In classroom hours alone, let alone the depth of it. But if one applies themselves, the result will be someone who can apply the principles to any specialty area in which they have specialty qualifications. Of course, they need to know the market and the products and the items. We don't believe in appraising by price guides and formulas. We didn't get to it yet. Some of the court cases I was going to talk about, the courts throw that out as soon as they hear it, when they have someone on the other side to point out why it's nonsense. But for a specialty that one knows or learns from involvement in the market, it's the only way to learn that area. So to be able to apply the principles to any specialty, to any what we call intended and assigned use, any specialty area, for any kind of appraisal. You know, there's another myth. You go to most dealers' websites and you'll see things like, there are 3 kinds of appraisals. There's insurance replacement value. That's always the highest value. Nonsense. Completely untrue. Then there is estate appraisal. And then there is the real appraisal, what I would offer you, what I'm willing to pay to buy your stuff. Well, okay, very nice. Self-serving. It's at every website. Truth is, and this came up in we have a very active AI Society group on LinkedIn. We have people from all over the world and all specialties. Also our Facebook, various groups we're setting up. But in there, what we see is this discussion came up. A very qualified valuer from the UK came in, and there was a discussion going on. He said, wait, I understand what you're saying. There's 2 kinds of appraisals. There's insurance, and then there's what dealers are willing to pay. What are you talking about? So Bill Korst, our most talented AI governance chair. He's been on your program, and he'll be on again.
He's a guest, or he's viewing actually as we speak.
Well, then you can like to hear what I have to say. He is the most proficient person in our program, but for good reason. He's been involved in all the programs. He was a member with me and the other appraisal groups before there was education. He was involved in the very first program we taught 30 years ago. So your Bill is very, very, I'm not going to say talented, I'm going to say professional. It's not an art. It's an inexact science to come back to the original subject, because it's based on scientific principles, proper application of them. It doesn't depend on inherent talent, because it can be taught. But then, bottom line is an opinion. So that's an inexact science. But in any event, so Bill, when this person commented about the two kinds of appraisals, Bill gave him a partial list of 20, 30 other standard, from very basic consumer assignments to the most advanced professional client community assignments. There are thousands of types of assignments. So what we produce is a valuer, apply the principles to any specialty for any intended use whatsoever, and in any global jurisdiction, certainly free market economies and common law jurisdictions. That's what they can do. That's what we teach, because we don't teach rote dogma.
So basically what you're doing is changing the mindset of people around the world with regard to your, or to in your business in a broader sense of evaluation in any category.
I would say we're trying to change the mind. It's very difficult, because the things we've been talking about, most dealer appraisers or other trade valuers like demologists, people who have a PhD in art history, so they think they're a valuer, someone who's an insurance agent, so they think they're a valuer. All of these other areas of activity that people think qualify them to be a valuer do not. They simply do not. And if anyone claims to be a valuer without having expertise in valuation, they are deceiving people and essentially committing fraud, because they're not being truthful. They know, for example, in gemology, we all know, gemology school doesn't teach valuation. Yet most of the world's gemologists claim they're qualified valuers. And they know it's not true. So I know we're about to end here, so let me answer your most important question. How does one do this? One seeks these. This one is after the 200 classroom hours, the advanced valuation specialist, because this is something completely new. It's the first time our profession has an area of specialization, an area of expertise, which is valuation itself. That's the first thing we teach. So our first AISCV certified valuer is as an AVS, an advanced valuation specialist, someone who could go into court and testify if an appraiser in any specialty did their job right. And they don't have to know the specialty, because they did talk about methodology and application of the principles, the same thing I teach people in every specialty in the course. And then we give a diploma, the other one, blue ribbon, not gold ribbon. That's the specialty AISCV. That one is in gems and jewelry, a gems and jewelry valuer. And programs now being developed by Randine in Oregon, who we talked about in the beginning, in residential contents. And Debbie's developing one also from Oregon. She's been on Steve's radio program as well. she's developing fine and decorative arts. Both of them were also with me in the first program 3 decades ago. Not to age them, because they don't age. But we're also hoping that you all are going to help us develop our specialty in rare books and manuscripts. That's also on the list. That will be my
pleasure.
So that's all one needs to do. You go to AIsociety.com and you'll see the various. Oh, this Blab, by the way, is on there live right now. So if anyone is there watching, hi. The replay will be there thanks to Allan's help and the technology whiz. We appreciate it. So that's it. That's all I got to say.
Elly, if I may, in the instant message column,
still there?
Write out your email address where people can contact you to get course material. I can hear you, Elly.
Yeah, we can hear you
now.
We still hear you.
I didn't mean to leave
in the instant message column.
I'm here to engage.
In the instant instant message column.
We're supposed to close at 9. Well, I thank you all for being such a patient and helpful interviewers.
Elly?
Yes.
Elly, can you hear us? Excuse me. Please type into the message column how you can be reached. Your email address.
The message column on the left or on the right? Oh, okay.
On the right.
On the right.
Elly Rosen
where it says send a message.
AIsociety.com. Did that come out right? What's it? Yes, I think it did. Okay, and the number is 347-281-4220. Please don't call me with, please tell me what this is worth. Call me if you want to join a program to find out how you can determine what it's worth.
I have a new book here that I need to get.
Talk to Bill. He'll talk to Steve. Steve will talk to me.
Elly, I can't see you right now, but I really want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Stephen is going into his,
it's been a pleasure. I wish I had
remarks.
I am breaking up. I can barely hear you guys.
We can hear you, and go ahead and close out the show.
Okay. I want to thank everybody, especially Elly, for joining us tonight. Allan for putting this program together.
I think it's showing that his microphone is muted.
Most important to whoever is me.
I can still hear him.
I don't.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Elly, I can't wait to put in my 250th hour. At the rate I'm going, it's going to be a while, but after the book fair, maybe things will slow down a little bit. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us. Elly, I want to thank you and Bill especially for what, the information that you're imparting to me and the courses that I'm taking. And I hope everybody, that's listening has an interest in what we're saying to learn more about appraisal. Remember that this program is sponsored by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. March 11th through 13th, we will be right here at the Coliseum in St. Petersburg. If you want to see something fun, get some coffee tomorrow morning about 7 o'clock and watch 114 guys who don't look like movers unload moving trucks full of rare books. It's a fun sight to watch, to get all those little books into the big convention center. Remember, Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, March 11th through 13th, this weekend, St. Petersburg at the Coliseum. And remember, you can bring a book to the lobby of the Coliseum, to the Florida Bibliophile Society, where they will give you an evaluation of the book. They will then check your book like a hat check in a restaurant. For 35 years, we've done this, never had a problem. You can then go in and talk to one of 114 dealers about the book that you want to sell, especially now that you have an idea of what the book is worth and the condition it's in. Once again, Elly, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. We look forward to future broadcasts with anybody from AIS. And it's one of the nicest things that's happened to me, meeting you all in the last few years, professionally speaking. And thanks. Have a good evening. We'll see you live and in person at the book fair. Good night, all. And happy book sales to you, if that be your thing. Thanks,
We done?
Allan, we're done.
Okay, take good care. Thanks so much, Allan. It was great.
Thanks, Elly. Allan, are we hanging on to do tests?
No, I think we'll try to do that.
Yeah, we've got the connections tonight. We'll talk about